But that's why look, I'll get back to kind of the stuff from the book on the mindset though, because there was kind of like these sub chapters within the chapter. So I'll go to a couple of that stuck out to me. One was the first one was that's the title is the hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving.
Yeah.
I thought that title on its own is just great because that got me thinking, Jamie, here's a true story I had with my buddy in college. And I would have been 20, 21, something like that. And I told him, hey man, by the time I'm in my late 20s, if I'm making $100,000 a year, I'm going to buy a BMW and everything's going to be good. That's what I kind of realized too in preparing for today, thinking about it. A lot of this also has to do with where you are in your life.
Yeah.
Because when I was 20, I was naive and I thought actually that's all it would take for me to have no problems ever.
Yeah.
And then, I made multiple of those hundreds over the years, my 30s and 40. And it's like, you still got
children,
problems.
You have family.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I've had
you
nice
ride
cars.
around the Benz ain't gonna be enough.
That's what I'm saying. I've had the Benz, I've had this, I've had that. And it's like, I could still tell you how many millions of times I've been unhappy having all that stuff. So it's sometimes I think you got to go through some of this stuff too to learn who you are, because maybe I could have been a different guy that went down those rabbit holes and had to keep buying nice cars and all that because I attached my own personal value to that. I'm glad I'm not that kind of person, but that also means that I'm not as flashy or maybe have the type of growth in my wealth like I might have otherwise have. So I think part of this stuff is learning who you are as you go through the journey and being comfortable with it. And then the other one I had, and then I'll hand it back because I like this one, is the number 3, which is enough is not too little.
Yeah.
And I think that's the, because it says here, enough is realizing that the opposite, an insatiable appetite for more, will push you to the point of regret. I've thought about that a lot of times, honestly, James, with my marriage. Because when I was younger, like late 20s into my early 30s, I was a lot like hungrier and ready to go work. I could be in the office till 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I remember one of my ex kind of business partner types, he was going through a divorce. And, unfortunately, him and his wife were having a bad time. And he one day was in the office and told me that his wife was bitching at him because he was on, at the time, was his BlackBerry. And it was like 10 o'clock at night. And he had the whole kind of alpha male attitude of, man, F her. She doesn't understand. I'm working for her and the kids, da, da, da. And then he was telling me that his wife at the time was saying how she didn't marry his business. She was telling him, I didn't marry your business. I married you, da, da, da. And that he was taking the other direction of that and said, nah, F that. I'm doing this for you. And that would get them fighting. And I remember like literally, James, like 3 weeks later, I freaking come in from like being out at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night on some business call in the back, back patio or whatever. And my wife looks at me and says, I didn't marry your business. I married you. And that hit me like right in between my eyes. And I remember being a younger guy just saying, because this guy was like 10 years older than me. So I looked up to him. And I remember saying to myself, you need to be careful. If you want to end up like him, you keep working like this. And if not, you better listen to your wife and believe that she did marry you and didn't marry money. And so that was something that I realized that I'm going to have regrets if I don't put a guardrail on how I'm chasing this dollar, right? And that's just a small example.
Well, no, I mean, and I think where this really hit home for me was that he actually did a distinguishing point of, like when you don't have anything and, when you're in poverty and you seek more, that's completely different than when you are well off and it's never enough, so to speak. And that those are separate impulses and the calculus is totally different. Like, hey, if I don't do blank, then I can't eat. Is totally different than if I don't do blank, then I won't have another zero in my bank account that I'm just investing with anyway. And has nothing to do with my day-to-day life, and so to speak. And so, but again, that's kind of the culture that we kind of internalize in many respects. And if you don't, again, if you want to do that, then yeah, I mean, do your thing. But if you don't recognize that culture is kind of being put in you and say, hey, if I don't want to do that, I can opt out of that, then that's how you can end up in these situations and not even really realize. And I think that's the point of the book, is to say, hey, if you don't have that insatiable desire just burning within you anyway, then maybe recognize, maybe try to take a step back and see, hey, what's driving you to do the things you're doing? Hey, what is enough for you to be happy? And then what other things would contribute to your happiness or take away from your happiness? So it's being able to take a more holistic look as opposed to kind of a myopic look that culturally we may be have embedded in us without us really knowing. And the other thing that I want to move on, but I do want to mention that, and you mentioned you mentioned eating, and I wanted to throw, because one of the other points he made was just that you don't know, how much you can eat until you overeat. And so it's like, okay, that kind of built in. You learn that, and you overeat once, and it's like, okay, yeah, I know, and then you may do it again, but some people chronically do it, but some people is like, oh, okay, I know that's what it feels like. I don't like overeating. So you can learn at that point and adjust your behavior based on that. And so again, it's not saying nobody should eat or nobody should, indulge themselves from time to time. It's just kind of know what you're getting into. And if that's a road you want to go down, then know that you're consciously do it, as opposed to doing it because that's just what you think is the only way to be.